Everybody. So the king was sitting in his throne room. His beautiful golden throne. His life was so good. It was great to be a king.
Obviously.
He wouldn't give this up for anything, right? Who here wants to be a king?
No.
We all want. No, a lot of people want to be kings, right? The king was very happy. He was living the good life. Suddenly, it was knock on the door. A group of the top ministers in the kingdom walked in. And they said, "Your Majesty, we just had our final meeting and we reached a decision. We decided we have to get rid of the Jews. We have to take care of the Jewish problem. We have here a series of decrees that you can pass to get rid of the Jews in our kingdom. It'll help our economy. It'll make the country so much better." The king is shocked to hear this. He stands up in his seat from his throne and he says, "Absolutely not. The Jews helped build this country. How can you try to do something like this to them? We need to show appreciation to the Jews for everything they did. To try to get rid of them for no reason? Absolutely not. Not on my watch." So they say, "Okay, we knew we might run into this problem. If that's the case, all of the ministers are in agreement. We're going to remove you from the throne. We're going to take you off the throne. We're going to lock you up. And we are going to run the government. And we are going to implement our plan."
Do that?
They had enough power to do it, obviously. And the king says, "I don't care what you do to me. I will never give in to this I will never agree to this horrible plan of yours. It's unjust. It's wrong. And I refuse to take part of it." Okay? So the king is removed from his throne. He's locked, imprisoned in a little cell somewhere in the castle. And the ministers take hold of the government and they begin preparing and getting things ready for their plan. Right? They start coming up with different ideas how to get rid of the Jewish people. Chas v'shalom. A week goes by. The king is suffering. Right? He's used to living a good life. Now he's locked up in a little cell. After a week, the door to his cell opens and the top three ministers walk in and they say, "Your Majesty, how are things going? How are you doing?" And the king says, "It's terrible. I'm suffering here. I want to be back on my throne." And they say, "No problem. We have nothing against you. All you have to do is agree to go along with our plan to get rid of the Jews. That's all you have to do. We'll free you. We'll put you back in power. We'll give you back everything. You're going to rule this country." And the king says, "No. No way. I will never agree to such an injustice. I will never take part of it. I don't care if you keep me locked up here. I will never agree to take part of this injustice." Okay? They leave. Another week goes by. They visit the king again. Now the king is suffering even more. It's getting harder and harder for somebody who grew up in the lap of luxury to be imprisoned like this, to be removed from power, to watch other people running his government. But the king is adamant, "No way, I will not take part of such a terrible injustice, such a terrible crime." A month goes by. 2 months go by. What do you guys think about this king?
Do not agree.
What?
I would never agree.
You would never agree. What do you think? Is this king...
Even if I was killed, I would
What?
never agree. Not really.
I think most kings today and most politicians today would agree, right?
I would never agree.
But this king, he has a strong moral courage, right? He knows what's right and he stands up for what's right. Finally, 3 months pass by. After 3 months, the king is broken. His spirits are crushed. His will is broken. And the ministers come in and the king says, "Please, please give me back take me out of here and give me back my throne." And they say, "No problem. All you have to do is agree to go along with our plan to get rid of the Jewish people." And the king reluctantly doesn't want to stay in prison any longer. He doesn't want to suffer any longer. He says, fine. Listen, you guys are going to do it anyways, with me or without me. Right? And they say, "Yeah, we're going to carry out our plan either way. You gain nothing. Your stubbornness is not going to accomplish anything besides increasing your own suffering." And the king says, "Listen, if it's not going to help, you're going to do it anyways. I have no choice." and he agrees to go along with their plan. Right?
Stupid person.
What do you guys think about this king now?
Stupid.
Okay. We're not talking about how smart or how stupid he is. We're talking about how good of a person he is. Right?
Bad person.
Do you think he's a bad person?
No. I'm not.
What would you do if you're locked up for 3 months in prison and you're told that you have to do something, you know?
I don't care.
So you would stand strong. You're stronger than that king, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I think the king sounds like a great guy. Who is this king? Ari's going to tell us who the king is. The Medrash in this week's Parsha tells us this king is Parai, the king of Mitzvah.
No.
The Medrash Tanchuma tells us this week's Parsha starts off. It says a new king was appointed over Egypt. And Rashi says there are different opinions. Is he really a new king? Or did he make new decrees? Said the Medrash Tanchuma, it was the same king, but he was removed from power because he refused to go along with the plan of getting rid of the Jewish people, of enslaving the Jewish people. And after 3 months out of power, he finally agreed. He finally agreed to go along with the plan of his ministers, and he allowed the Jewish people, he took part in enslaving the Jewish people. Now, when reading this Medrash, it seems like a very strange story, because it doesn't match with the rest of Parai's personality. Right? We read a few verses later what happens. Parai is told that the Redeemer is going to be born to the Jewish people who's going to free them from Egypt. Shouldn't Parai be excited? Shouldn't he be so happy? There's going to be a Redeemer who's going to free the Jewish people. What does Parai do? I'm going to kill every single Jewish boy. He wants to kill every single Jewish baby. Doesn't say his ministers forced him into this. Parai, a long while later, gets sick. What does he do? He decides he's going to chas v'shalom bathe in the blood of Jewish children. This same person, who was 3 months imprisoned, standing up for his beliefs, for what he believes is right, suddenly he's killing Jewish children, bathing in their blood. Right? In 2 weeks, you're going to read that all of Parai's advisors come to him after the plagues start, and they say, Parai, when are you going to let the Jews go already? What does Parai say? Absolutely not. No way. Never. What happened? How did this Parai, right, this righteous Parai, right, to refuse to enslave the Jewish people, he spent 3 months in prison to avoid taking any part of this. Suddenly, he's the one who's leading the charge to kill the Jewish children, right? He refuses his all the requests of all of his ministers and advisors to try to free the Jewish people. What happened to Parai?
Someone came in and killed him.
200 years ago, in the city of Mezhibus, a terrible pandemic broke out. A terrible plague began to spread through the city. It wasn't one of these COVID pandemics that hurts. Chas v'shalom, it hurt a lot of people, but it kills only the elderly. This pandemic kills everybody. People are dying right and left. There's no vaccine. There's no cure. The people of the city bring in the best doctors to try to stop it, but it's only getting worse. The spread continues. So they go to the tzaddik, the Rebbe, Rab Baruch of Mezhibus, and they say, Rebbe, you have to do something about this. You have to do something about this terrible plague. And Rab Baruch says, I've been davening, I've been trying to do something about this, I have to think, what can we do to stop this plague? He says to them, there's only one solution. I need you to travel to this distant village. He names them a certain village. And he tells them, I want you to travel to this village, and I want you to find Yisachar Shmuel, a Jew, Yisachar Shmuel, and I want you to go to him, and I want you to ask him to bless the people of this city and to decree that the plague should stop. Wow. Who's this Yisachar Shmuel? This hidden tzaddik who can decree that the plague should stop. So a group of the elders of the city, the leaders of the city, they get together a delegation who's going to travel to this distant village, and they're going to meet with this hidden tzaddik, right? In the chair over here.
They all wanted.
Right? They all wanted to meet the hidden tzaddik. So they set out on the journey. They reached this distant village, and they asked people, "Where's the tzaddik? Or Yisachar Shmuel?" People are looking at them, "Tzaddik or Yisachar Shmuel?" You know what you're talking about. So they start asking around. Maybe maybe not the tzaddik. Must be maybe he's a hidden tzaddik. Maybe nobody knows about him. You know anybody named Yisachar Shmuel? No, we don't really know anybody by that name. They continue asking. Finally, somebody says, "Oh, you mean the drunk that lives at the edge of the city?" Yeah, Shmuel the drunkard. Yeah, you have to go that way. You'll find his house. It's the broken down house at the edge of the city. Shmuel the drunkard. Wow, that's who the Baruch of Mezhibush, that's who our Rebbe sent us to? I don't know, it must be a good disguise, the undercover hidden tzaddik, right? Everybody thinks he's a drunkard, right? So they go to the house, they knock on the door, and Yisachar Shmuel's wife opens the door with a puzzled look on her face. "What do you want?" And they say, "We're here to get a blessing from your husband, the great tzaddik, Yisachar Shmuel." And she says, "A great tzaddik? Do you know who my husband is?" "Come inside, I'll show you who my husband is." They come inside and they see you rolling on the floor under the table. Yisachar is lying there with a bottle in his hand. And they say, "We're here to get a bracha from him. The great tzaddik, or Baruch of Mezhibush, sent us to get a bracha." "Are you trying to make a joke out of me?" she says. "What do you think? This is a joke? There's no way my husband's going to give you a bracha. He's not sober enough to utter the words that are required to give you this blessing that you want." And they say, "But the Rebbe sent us. We need a blessing from him." So she says, "Listen, if you want, you can come back tomorrow morning, early in the morning when he gets up. He's a little, he's still a little bit drunk. He's going to be a little hungover. But, in the morning, maybe he's a little more sober. We try to get him to daven a little bit in the morning. Maybe that's a good time. You can come. We could try to get a bracha out of him." Okay, they come the next morning. They wait for Yisachar Shmuel to get up. And they're standing there. They say, "Yisachar Shmuel, we need a bracha." And he says, "Give me a drink. Where's the bottle?" He starts looking around. And his wife says, No. Yisachar Shmuel, there's no bottle until you give these people the bracha they came for. And he says, "I need a drink. I got to give a bracha without saying a good l'chaim first." Right? He says, "You didn't daven yet." "What do you mean? I got to say l'chaim before davening." Right? He says, "No, absolutely not. You're not getting any drinks until you give them a blessing." "Okay, what do you want me to bless you with?" You need a blessing that we need you not just to give us a blessing, we need you to decree that the plague in Mezhibush should stop. And he says, "Okay, I bless you and I decree that Hashem, our merciful Father in heaven, should stop the plague and should heal all the sick people in your town." Okay, wonderful. They got their bracha. They start walking out, and Yisachar Shmuel grabs his bottle. He starts drinking again. And they come back to Mezhibush. And as they come to the town, they're shocked to see that everyone is celebrating. The plague stopped. Everyone is getting better. Everyone is healed. When did it happen? The exact moment that they got this blessing. They're very, very puzzled. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand what's going on. So they go to the Rebbe, they go to Rabbi Baruch, and they say, "You have to explain this to us. You have to explain this to us. Who is this guy?" Right? This drunkard who spends his whole day drinking, right? Doesn't spend a moment studying Torah. He barely manages to pray a few words in the morning before he drinks enough he can't pray anymore. How is he the one to give a blessing and make this decree? So Rabbi Baruch tells him, "I'll tell you the story. Yisachar Shmuel was not always a drunk. He used to be, when he was younger, a few years ago, he was a very successful businessman. He was very wealthy, very successful. He was very good looking, very handsome, and he had a lot of connections with the Russian and Ukrainian nobility, and he used to travel around on business. And many of the local nobility would invite him to their parties, and he would join them. And, he would do things that a Jew is not really supposed to do. He would take part in these parties that a Jew shouldn't be at. But that's who he was, and that's what type of person he was. Now, one day, as he's attending one of these parties, he meets this Russian noblewoman, a very powerful and wealthy noblewoman, who takes a liking to him, and they become friendly. And after a while, she says to him, wouldn't it be great if we got married? We'd make a very powerful couple, right? You're very good looking, you're very intelligent, and I'm very wealthy, and I have a lot of connections and a lot of power. And he says, but I'm married. He says, who needs you cares about your Jewish wife? And you could leave that all behind, and you could join me. We could live a good life together. And he says, it's a good idea. It's a great idea. Okay, we'll make a big party to celebrate our engagement. Okay, they throw a huge party to celebrate their engagement in this noblewoman's palace. And they come, and he's drinking, and he's celebrating, and he has a very good time. Finally, at the end of the party, he decides to walk around the grounds a little bit to get some fresh air. And as he's walking at the edge of the grounds, he hears yelling and screaming. He comes closer. He hears crying and groaning. And he sees at the edge of her estate, there are some pits in the ground. And this was a prison, right? Where she had people locked up and thrown into these pits. And he comes closer, and he sees this Jewish family in the pit. They have no food. They're trying to crawl out of the pit, climbing the walls of the pit, screaming and yelling for help. When they see him standing there, they call out, and they say, maybe you could help us and give us some food. We're hungry. We're starving. He says, what happened? Why were you thrown into the pit? And they say, we couldn't afford the heavy taxes that were imposed upon us. We owe a lot of money. He can't stand to see this poor family suffering. He goes back to this noblewoman, and he says, I was at I saw pits at the edge of your estate, and there's this poor family there. What's going on? And she says, they owe a lot of money. They owe, 500 rubles. 500 rubles? Listen, if I pay off their loan, will you free them? Of course, sure. So he reaches into his pocket. It's pretty much all the money he has. He takes out the 500 rubles that he has on him, and he gives it to her. He has a few rubles left, and he uses it to hire a wagon to take this poor family home. And he leaves this party. Is it
a marriage?
It was an engagement party, right? He leaves the party, and he can't stop thinking about what he just did. Right? On one hand, he feels great. He helped save this poor Jewish family. He saved their lives. But on the other hand, what is he doing? He's about to marry this noblewoman who throws Jewish families into a pit. That's what he wants to do. He wants to leave his own family behind. Abandon his own wife and children. Is this what he wants to do? The next 2 days he's miserable. Right? He can't stop thinking about this, going back and forth in his head. And finally he says, that's it. I can't do this. Right? He goes back to the noblewoman. He says, I'm sorry, I can't do it. He leaves, and he goes back to his family. As difficult as it was for him, he knew that was the decision he had to make. This act of his, says Rav Baruch, caused a great commotion in heaven. Right? On one hand, you have this Jew, right, who is about to do something terrible, is about to abandon his family, marry into wealth and power, give in to all his temptations. And he does a small mitzvah. He does a little mitzvah. He helps he saves a Jewish family from prison. And that mitzvah, right, causes him to want to do more, right? To want to do another mitzvah. And he does some mitzvah which is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult for him. So the heavenly court examines his actions, and they decree that because one mitzvah led to another mitzvah, they're going to give him the opportunity to do an even greater mitzvah. He is going to be able to save not just one Jewish family who's stuck in a pit. he's going to be given the opportunity to save an entire Jewish city from a plague. And he's going to be given the special ability to bless and to make a decree to save a Jew from trouble, from whatever problems he finds himself in. He is being given the power of blessings.
Only once?
No, as many times as he wants. And as the court is about to issue this decree, right, as the court is about to issue this ruling, suddenly a bunch of angels jump up and they say, how can he do it? How can he do such a thing? Do you see what type of person he is? Right now, of course, he just did a great mitzvah and he's doing more mitzvahs. But yeah, in a few years, he's going to be back to same old stuff that he's been doing before, right? And if he has this power of blessing, do you know what he's going to use it for? The words of the heavenly court are going to be worthless because he's going to annul all the decrees that you make. So first of all, he has too much power. If he has the power of blessing and every word he says is fulfilled, it's too much power. He's going to misuse it. And second of all, he's going to become a sinner again pretty soon. He's not going to be worthy of this blessing. He's going to ruin it. Right? He's going to start sinning again and he's going to lose this power. So it was decided in heaven that they're going to solve both problems with one solution. They're going to turn him into a constant drunk. His drinking, obviously it's not a good thing to spend your time drinking, but it's going to prevent him from, going back and from committing sins, from falling back to his old ways. And also it's going to prevent him from going around blessing people all day and misusing the special power. And that way, only when this blessing is really needed, is a tzaddik going to come along and going to use this blessing. And our Baruch says, I was very reluctant to take advantage of this. I know that it's not something that the heavenly court wants me to use often, but I saw that the entire Jewish community was in danger, and this was the only way to save them, and that's why I sent you to Yisachar Shmuel to get the blessing. So we see something amazing from this.
But then why didn't you just do it again?
We see that a person who does a mitzvah that's difficult for him, and he struggles and he overcomes his challenges, his internal struggles and his external challenges, and he is able to do a mitzvah that's very difficult for him. What does the heavenly court say? They say, we're going to give him an opportunity to do an even greater mitzvah. We're going to allow him to do a mitzvah on an even greater level. And this is true not only because the heavenly court decrees it, but it's also part of human nature. So there was a lot of excitement in town. There was a wedding supposed to take place that night. This little, Polish or Ukrainian town. Well, which town was it in Mendy? My son Mendy made a play about this story in his class recently. You don't know. Okay, so this little Polish town, they're very excited. There's a wedding supposed to take place that night between a young orphan boy and an orphan girl, and the whole town is taking part in the wedding, all preparing. They donated money. They got everything ready for the wedding. And some great tzaddikim from the nearby cities also came to the town to celebrate and take part in the wedding. The tzaddik Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev was there. The Alter Rebbe was there. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk was there.
No, they suggested the wedding.
Oh, they suggested the wedding, even better, right? And they were there to celebrate this great wedding. And as everyone is getting ready for the great wedding, suddenly there are yells and shouts in the streets. The chappers are coming, the kidnappers are coming. Who are the chappers? So this was during the decree, the times of the Cantonist decree by Tsar Nikolai, which drafted young Jewish children into the army. And it's starting at a young age, I think officially from the age of 12, but some were drafted even younger. They would take Jewish children, tear them away from their families, and drag them off to the army for 25 years. And of course, the Jews didn't participate. All the children would hide. They would do all different things to avoid the draft. So the government would hire chappers, kidnappers, to go around the Jewish towns and to grab Jewish children off the streets. Right? So as soon as the people heard that the chappers are coming, all the children disappeared into different hiding places, different tunnels and hidden rooms under homes that they knew they had prepared for exactly this situation. And the chappers come into town, and the town is completely empty. They're walking down the street looking for someone to grab, And suddenly they see this young man walking down the street. Looks very serious. His mind is occupied. It was his own wedding about to take place in another few hours. He didn't hear the whole commotion around him. He was busy saying Tehillim and preparing for his wedding. And suddenly he's roughly grabbed and thrown into a wagon. And he's dragged off to the army barracks at the edge of the city. When the people in town heard what happened, that the groom who was supposed to get married tonight was just kidnapped and dragged off to the army, what do you do? The tzaddik, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, says, I'm going to have to do something about this. I have to take care of this. I'm going to go speak to the general. So he goes to the barracks and he asks to meet the general. They tell him absolutely not, but he walks right by the guards who don't say anything. They don't stop him. And he walks into the general's room. The general's lying in his bed with a big bottle of whiskey in his hands. And he looks up and he says, "Filthy Jew, what are you doing here? How dare you disturb my rest, my relaxation?" And he says, "Well, it was a young Jewish groom who was supposed to get married tonight, who was just kidnapped and was drafted for the army, and I'm here to have him released. You know, whatever it takes, whatever the price is, we can raise the money to get him released." And he says, "What? You think you could bribe an honorable Russian general? How much money do you think you're going to give me? 5,000 rubles?" And he says, "Okay, 5,000 rubles. If that's what it takes, 5,000 rubles. The general says, "Okay, fine, but you have till tonight to bring it." Now, this general was in a bit of trouble. He was drinking, trying to drink away his sorrows. He had just been caught misappropriating some government funds. And he was told that he had one day to come up with 5,000 rubles or else he would be thrown somewhere, right? And, he was desperate. He didn't know what to do, but now here's the opportunity. He can get the Jews to pay off his debt. Wonderful. Okay, you have till tonight to bring me the money. So Menachem Mendel goes out, and he comes back. He says, "We need to raise the money." He meets up with the tzaddik, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He says, "We have to go around and raise the funds." And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, "Well, let's get the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, to join us for the special mitzvah." So they find Alter Rebbe, and Alter Rebbe says, "I'll come with you and we'll raise the funds together, but on one condition. I get to decide where we go and whom we approach first." "No problem, sure, fine, lead the way." So the Alter Rebbe walks out of the shul, and he starts walking towards the edge of the town. This is the edge of the Jewish community, all the way at the edge of the Jewish community, near the Gentile section of the town. There's this big, beautiful mansion. It belongs to a Jew who used to be called Rav Wolf. Now he was known as Adek. That was his Polish name. And he was very, very wealthy, but he was known as a terrible miser. He didn't give a penny to anybody. Oh, he gave a penny to everybody, but he didn't give more than a penny to anybody. Right?
Rusty penny.
And what?
Or a rusty penny.
Yes, anybody used to come to his house, he had this old rusty penny that he used to give them. And pretty soon people stopped coming to his house. Nobody wanted to bother for the rusty penny that he used to give out. And Alter Rebbe says, "No, let's go to this beautiful house." And Menachem Mendel says, you know who lives here, right? He's going to give us a rust. It's not worth our time. Let's go to the next house. And Alter Rebbe says, "No, we had an agreement. I'm going to choose where to go." So they go up to the house. They knock on the door. And Rav Wolf opens the door. "Oh, honorable rabbis, how can I help you?" "Well, there was a groom who was kidnapped. He's getting married tonight, and we're trying to do the mitzvah, right? A pidyon shvuyim anach nasas kala. You have to help us out." "Of course, what a great honor. I would love to take part of this special mitzvah. Wait here a minute." He runs into the house. He comes back with his rusty penny. And he gives the rusty penny to the Alter Rebbe. Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk and Levi Yitzchak look at the Alter Rebbe like, "We told you so, right? Throw it back in his face and let's get out of here." And the Alter Rebbe looks at Rav Wolf and he says, "Wow, what a beautiful mitzvah, Rav Wolf. It's amazing that you had the opportunity to be the first one to take part in this special mitzvah. I want to give you a blessing that Hashem should help you, and you should make you so successful. You should be able to give many more mitzvahs and help out many more people. Thank you so much for this amazing mitzvah. And they turn around, they say goodbye to Rav Wolf, and they start walking down the steps. And as they're walking away from the house, the door opens up, and Rav Wolf comes running down the stairs. And you're like, whoa, wait a second, come back. Okay, they come back, and he says, I'm feeling a little guilty. I think I should, maybe I can help you a little more. Wait here a minute. He goes into the house, and he comes back, and this time he has a nickel, right? A nickel. He says, here, I would like to increase my donation 5-fold. Here's a nickel for you. And Alter Rebbe looks at him and he says, wow, a nickel. Amazing. Such a beautiful mitzvah. Wow, such an honor, such a schus to take part in the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim and Achnasas Kala. May Hashem bless you, shower you with blessings. You'll do many more mitzvahs. Thank you so much. And they start walking away again and again. The door opens and their wolf comes down again. No, come back again. Right? They come back, and this time he pulls out $1 or a ruble, and he says, here, I have a ruble for you. Wow, a ruble, amazing. Such a great mitzvah. Hashem should bless you. You should increase your wealth. You should be able to do so many more mitzvahs. They start walking away again, and their wolf comes running back, and he gives them 10 rubles. They go away another time, and again he comes back chasing after them, and this time he has 100 rubles. The next time it's 1,000 rubles, and the next time it's 5,000 rubles, the full sum that they needed. Right? Of course, this time they can honestly thank him for his donation, right? And they go to the general, and general is shocked to see them back so fast with the full sum of money. And he frees the chassan, and they start walking back to the town. So as they're walking back to town, they have to cross the river. And there's a narrow bridge over here, over the river. And as they're about to cross the narrow bridge, they hear the sounds of hoofbeats behind them. And they look back, and they see the general on a horse flying down the river, the side of the riverbank, towards this bridge. Apparently, he figured instead of paying the 5,000 ruble fine, he could just take the money and run. And that's what he was doing. And as he gets to the bridge, the horse is moving so fast, he flies right off the side of the bridge. And he falls into the water and he drowns. And as the chassan is crossing over the bridge, he stumbles over the bag with 5,000 rubles that the general was running away with. And the tzaddikim say to him, this is obviously Hashem's wedding present for you, and you should use it, obviously, to pay for the wedding itself and to start your new life. Of course, this is what?
1 nickel and 1 penny.
I think it was 5,000 altogether. This is obviously a wedding gift for you from Shamayim. And they went back to town and they were able to celebrate the wedding. And of course, the honored guest was Rav Wolf, who paid, of course, the 5,000 rubles. And now he was so excited. And he says to tzaddikim, he says, you don't understand. He says, never in my life did I have the feeling of giving tzedakah and of helping somebody out. He says, once I had that feeling, I wanted more. Right? Every time I would give somebody a little penny, they would throw it back in my face. Finally, somebody took it and I understood what it's like to do a mitzvah. He says, I wanted to do more. And I couldn't stop myself until I gave you the full sum of money.
Wasn't it just when he was starting to get
So Mendy has some of the backstory that many years earlier, he gave somebody a small donation. He didn't have a lot of money at the time, and the guy threw it back in his face, and that's when he decided that he's never giving tzedakah again.
He gave
right?
him 1 penny, so he threw him back in his face, so he can't give him the same penny.
Yes, right. So if somebody has somebody doesn't have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, he has a bitter feeling for the mitzvah, right? Then it's hard for him to overcome. But once he overcomes it himself and he's able to do the mitzvah, and he gets the feeling what it's like to do a mitzvah, he wants to do more. And this is what the Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos Perek Daled Mishnah Beis. The Mishnah tells us, right? You should be very careful, right? We should be quick to perform even a minor mitzvah, right? Just as much as you would be careful doing a big mitzvah. Don't think this is a little mitzvah. You should run away from the smallest sin as if it was the greatest sin. Why? Says the Mishnah, 2 reasons. Why should you run to do a small mitzvah and run away from a small sin? 2 reasons. The first thing is mitzvah Goreres mitzvah. One mitzvah leads or literally drags along another mitzvah, and a sin drags along another sin. And then another reason, sheschar mitzvah, the reward for doing a mitzvah is that you can do another mitzvah. And the reward for doing a sin, or the punishment for doing a sin, is that you're going to do another sin. Say the Mefarshim and the Mishnah is telling us 2 things. First of all, a person who does a mitzvah, the very nature is that a person who does one mitzvah, a person who's kind to somebody, a person who does a good thing, it creates a feeling in their heart that they want to do more. They want to increase, they want to improve, they want to continue doing the good things. And a second, a deeper level, is that a person who does a mitzvah, when his mitzvah rises up to heaven and comes before the heavenly court decrees that he should be given the opportunity and the ability to do many, many more mitzvahs. But unfortunately, while this is the case with mitzvahs, it's also the case of the opposite of mitzvahs. Right? L'chaim. The Gemara tells us that what is the path of the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara doesn't come over to you and tell you go worship idols. The Yetzer Hara comes to you and says, maybe you could do this little tiny mitzvah, tiny sin. Right? Maybe you could say some not nice word about somebody. He's not going to hear. He's really a bad person anyways. He deserves it. Now, why does the Yetzer Hara do that? Does he really care about the small sin? Absolutely not. He doesn't care about it. But he knows that once he gets you to do this little sin, tomorrow he's going to come with a slightly bigger sin. And the next day with a bigger sin. And eventually he's going to get you to serve idols. This is the nature. This is the human nature. And this is the nature of the heavenly court. This is how they run. This is how Hashem runs the world. So, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Chasma explains that this is what happened to Pari. Pari was a tzaddik. He was a tzaddik. He was a righteous king. He stood up to his ministers and advisors. And he says, no way, I will not agree to harm the Jewish people. But he was put under pressure. He was thrown into prison for 3 months. And eventually he agreed to take part of it. But something amazing happened. The second he started to take part of it, what happened? He wanted more. He wanted to do more and more and worse and worse. And over the next few years, this same Pari used to be perhaps the most righteous king, one of the most righteous Gentile kings in the history of the world, based on the story we said about him earlier, turned into somebody who was bathing in the blood of Jewish children. Because once you start down the path of sinning and harming people, even if you start reluctantly, but you get involved in it, it's going to go, one sin is going to lead to another sin. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. But if this is the case when it comes to sin, we know that the power of good is 500 times greater than the power of evil. So could you imagine what happens when somebody does a small mitzvah? You might be reluctant to do the mitzvah. You might not be interested in doing the mitzvah. But the second you do a small mitzvah, it creates a tremendous drive and a tremendous power, both in your human nature and from the heavenly court above, to do another mitzvah, to do a greater mitzvah, a bigger mitzvah, a more difficult mitzvah. And this is true really with every mitzvah, right? But we don't always feel this by every mitzvah. And perhaps, I haven't seen this anywhere, but this is my own conjecture, perhaps, at least based on the stories we were saying, it also depends on how difficult it is for you to do the mitzvah, and how much effort you put into it. Somebody who does a mitzvah that's hard for you, right, that involves a lot of effort, that goes against your nature, right, and it's something that you're very involved in, and you're committed to, right, that type of mitzvah has much more power and much more drive behind it. And that type of mitzvah can drag along and can bring along much, much greater mitzvahs. Now, of course, it's true with every mitzvah, but it's especially true when a person makes a solid commitment, a serious commitment to do a mitzvah. He commits himself with his heart and soul, and it's a mitzvah which he might struggle with, it might require effort, might be challenges. And such a mitzvah has so much power, right? That every one of us, we all want to improve, and it's hard for us. What is the solution? We all have to think about one small mitzvah. That's a little difficult for us. And we have to make a solid commitment to do that mitzvah. And who knows what great mitzvahs, it'll drag along after it. To conclude with a final story, Chaim was a young bacher. He came from a very prominent Hasidic family. His parents were Ziditshover Hasidim, and his uncle was the great tzaddik, the Chabiner Rav. But Chaim grew up at a very difficult time. He was born shortly after the war. His parents were Holocaust survivors. And he grew up in Israel shortly after the state was founded. And it was a difficult time for a young religious Jew. There was a lot of bad influences at the time. There was the influence of, the Shomer Hatzoyer, the secular Zionist youth movements, and Chaim got caught up with it. And he left the yeshiva, and he left religious life behind him. And he, being a very patriotic Zionist, he enlisted to join the Israeli army, the IDF. Shortly after he enlists in the IDF, he gets the news that all the surrounding Arab nations, this was the beginning of 1967, and all of the Arab armies are getting ready to attack the small Jewish state with the intention of Chas v'Shalom driving the Jews into the sea. And Chaim is very nervous, right? It was nice to enlist in the army before there are five nations around you about to attack. He's very nervous. He doesn't know what to do. Maybe he could cancel his enlistment, but it doesn't work that way, right? So he's pretty desperate. So he decides he's going to go to his uncle, the tzaddik, Chabiner Rav, and ask for his blessing and guidance. So he comes to the Chabiner Rav, and the Chabiner Rav says, there's no need to be afraid in the time of war. A Jew who follows the Torah and observes the mitzvahs, Hashem protects them. And Chaim's like, yeah, but I don't really do that. I don't really study Torah, and it's been many years since I really did any mitzvahs. So the Chabiner Rav says, okay, so maybe you're willing to accept upon yourself now to do a mitzvah in which merit Hashem will protect you. And Chaim reluctantly says, yeah, okay, which mitzvah? So Chaim's parents and family are there, and they start whispering in the Rebbe's ear, tell him to keep Shabbos, tell him to keep kashrus, maybe put on tefillin. And the Rebbe ignores their advice. And he says, Chaim, listen, you're a Ziditshover Einikel. You come from a very prominent family of Ziditshover Hasidim. And amongst the Hasidim of Ziditshover, there's a minhag, an interesting minhag, right? Friday is a day which is dedicated to preparing for Shabbos, right? Not just in the afternoon, an hour before Shabbos starts, but the whole Friday is dedicated to preparing for Shabbos. As a matter of fact, from Friday morning, they're so excited about the incoming Shabbos that's going to be coming in that night that they don't say Tachanun on Fridays. That's the minute of the Hasidic Ziditshover. They don't say Tachanun on Fridays. So I think that would be a great mitzvah for you to do, to uphold this Ziditshover minhag, not to say Tachanun on Fridays. Chaim's like, really? That's what you want me to do? No problem, Rebbe. You don't need to worry about me saying Tachanun. No problem. I'm never going to say Tachanun on Fridays, Rebbe. You have nothing to worry about. Okay? Okay, wonderful. Hashem should bless you and protect you. Okay, Chaim goes off to the army. And Chaim's parents are shocked that this is what the Rebbe asked, but they know not to question the Rebbe. Right? Chaim goes to the army, and it's a few very, very tense. Very tense period shortly before the 6-day war broke out. And Chaim's very afraid, but he knows that he has a bracha from his uncle. And that Friday, he's going to keep his minhag. He's not going to say Tachanun. He's so excited. He's not going to say Tachanun. He made a commitment. He's not going to say Tachanun. Right? And as he's sitting there thinking about how he's not going to say Tachanun, he says, one second. Tachanun is the middle of davening, right? There's parts of davening that are called Tachanun. If I don't daven, is that called not saying Tachanun? Or is that just called not davening? Right? You can't not say Tachanun if you don't daven. It doesn't work like that. Okay, fine, I'll daven. Okay, finds some friend of his who has a siddur. He borrows a siddur, and he starts davening. And then he mumbles the words a little bit, and he makes sure to skip over all the sections of Tachanun. He makes sure to skip a little bit before the Tachanun and after Tachanun too, right? Shouldn't even get close to saying Tachanun, right? And he davens, and he's very happy. He didn't say Tachanun. Wow, beautiful, right? A week goes by, and the next Friday comes along, right? And this time he says, I don't know if I davened last week. I don't know if I'm really a good davening. I wasn't really thinking about what I'm saying. I don't know if that davening even counts. Maybe I should daven with a little more kavanah today, right? So he starts davening with more kavanah, and he starts thinking about what he's saying, and he makes sure to avoid the tachanun. He's not going to say even one word of tachanun, right? Another week goes by, and he says, I davened last week without a talis and tefillin. I don't know if that can be really considered a serious davening. I have to find a talis and tefillin this week. He borrows a talis and a tefillin, and he davens with kavanah with his talis and tefillin, right? The next week, he goes out to look for a minyan, right? This davening without a minyan might not be such a good davening. So he goes out, he davens with a minyan and talis and tefillin, but he makes sure to skip tachanun. Okay, a few days go by, and it's Monday morning, and Chaim's sitting there and he's thinking, if the minhag of not saying tachanun on Friday doesn't make sense if you don't say tachanun on Monday either, right? If you don't say tachanun a whole week, I'm not avoiding tachanun on Friday. I just don't say tachanun, right? I'm not really keeping the minhag, so I have to start saying tachanun the rest of the week, right? Okay, so he starts saying the tachanun. Eventually, he starts davening the rest of the week. He's wearing his talis and tefillin, right? And he's davening 3 times a day now with a minyan. And Friday comes along, and he's so excited. He's not going to say tachanun, but then he starts thinking, well, why don't we say tachanun on Friday? Because we are supposed to be preparing for Shabbos, right? We're supposed to be celebrating. We're so excited that Shabbos is coming. But if I don't keep Shabbos, right, I don't know if it really counts. Right? So that's when he decides to start keeping Shabbos. Once he's keeping Shabbos, he starts eating Shabbos food. He starts eating kosher food. And within a few months, Chaim was keeping all the Torah and mitzvahs. One mitzvah brought along another mitzvah. Might have been a small mitzvah. One mitzvah dragged along another mitzvah. It was a serious commitment he made. Right? It was a small mitzvah. But one mitzvah dragged along another mitzvah until Chaim was doing all the mitzvahs. So each and every one of us, we all have things, we all want to improve, we all want to get better. What is the solution? The solution is every one of us thinks about a small mitzvah that's hard for us to do. And we say, we're going to commit ourselves to doing this mitzvah, right? It might be a small mitzvah, right? But if a small sin, right? If one sin was able to take this righteous pari and turn him into somebody, a wicked pari who bathes in the blood of Jewish children, then can you imagine what a mitzvah can do for us? Starting off with one small mitzvah, we'll bring another mitzvah. It'll change our nature. It'll change the decrees in heaven, and one mitzvah will bring along another mitzvah until our whole lives will be full of mitzvahs. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.